Nightmares can be very vivid. They can also be very realistic. The events that happen in them can seem so real that when you wake up, you think they really happened to you. Many people who have nightmares often brush them off as just dreams and go about their day. However, there are some people whose nightmares can completely alter their future. This was the case for one man who opened the front door to his house one night only to come face to face with his dead wife. My wife had gone pale and her eyes were wide open. It must have been late at night because the room was dark except for the light filtering in from outside. It was then that I noticed my wife wasn't in bed with me. I approached cautiously, holding out a hand. "Who are you?" I asked softly. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with sadness. "I'm your wife," she whispered. "What?" I exclaimed. This is normally a pretty uneventful time for me. But on this particular night, while I was taking out the recycling bins, I heard a knock on the door. "Who are you?" I asked. She sat down on the couch next to me and said nothing. I explained what had happened and they arrested me for murder. "What do you think happened to the man in the first story? Do you think he's crazy, or is he actually hiding in his house from his dead wife? What do you think happened to the woman in the second story? Why do you think she came back from the dead to seek revenge on her killer?" Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you like this video, be sure to check out more stories like these. Thank you for watching and stay safe. I'm currently awaiting trial. I don't know what will happen to me, but I'm not afraid. I did what I had to do. I helped her die. That's all I know. For a moment, I considered running to the phone, but I was frozen in fear. Suddenly, she spoke. Her voice was raspy and sounded like nails on a chalkboard. "I need your help," she said. "With what?" "With dying," she replied. I laughed nervously. "I don't understand. Please help me," she begged. "I want to die." I hesitated, unsure of what to do. Then I realized she was serious. I quickly got up and said, "I'll be right back." I rushed to the kitchen and grabbed a large knife. Returning to the living room, I offered it to her with a smile. "Here you go," I said. "Will this do?" She took the knife and looked at it for a moment. "Thank you," she whispered. Then she plunged the knife into her chest. I screamed and backed away. She pulled the knife out of her chest and looked at me. "See, now I can finally rest," she said. She collapsed to the ground and died. I opened the door and there was a woman on the other side. I didn't recognize her, but she seemed familiar. "Can I help you?" I asked her. She was dressed shabbily and her hair was a mess. She was also barefoot and I could see the skin on her feet was peeling away. I assumed she was homeless and tried to offer her some money. "No, I'm looking for someone else," she said to me. "Do you live alone?" "Yes, I do." "Are you sure?" "Yes, I'm sure." She leaned closer and her breath smelled like rotting meat. "Are you Mr. Williams?" "Yes, I am." Her eyes flashed a bright red and she pushed past me and into my house. "What are you doing?" I shouted at her, but she ignored me and continued walking further into the house. I followed her to the living room and sat down on the couch, trying to figure out what to do. I wanted to call the police, but she could have been dangerous. "But you're dead," she frowned. "Dead? What do you mean?" she asked, pushing herself off the bed. As she did, I noticed the lack of a bump in her stomach. My heart sank. I had lost the baby and my wife in the same day. I reached out to comfort her, but she flinched away. "Don't touch me," she said, her voice cold. "You killed me," she added, her eyes blazing with anger. I shook my head, tears welling up again. "I didn't kill you. I love you. I would never hurt you." She screamed, "You lied to me. You never loved me." And with that, she disappeared. I tried to call out to her, but no sound came out. She was gone. I searched the house, calling her name, but there was no answer. No one believes me when I tell them what happened. They say I'm still grieving and imagining things, but I know what I saw and heard. I haven't slept since it happened. I haven't eaten either. I keep replaying the nightmare over and over in my head. I can't take it anymore. I want to see her. I want to tell her how much I love her and how sorry I am for what happened. I was so distraught that I didn't notice the blood on my hands until I got to the kitchen sink. Staring back at me from the mirror was a ghastly sight. My hands were covered in blood. I screamed in terror and fell to my knees. That's when I heard it. A voice whispering in my ear. "You lied to me. You never loved me," it hissed. I jumped up and ran to the bathroom, locking myself inside. I could hear the voice getting closer. "Open the door. Let me in," it demanded. I pressed my back against the door, bracing for impact. But when it opened, there was nothing there. The voice was still in my head though. "You killed me. You deserve to die," it taunted. Shaking, I dialed 911 and told them to send an ambulance. As the operator asked me questions, I could hear the voice growing louder. "He killed me. He deserves to die," it screeched. By the time the paramedics arrived, I was hysterical. They sedated me and brought me to a hospital. I jumped out of bed and stumbled into the bathroom. Staring back at me from the mirror was a man I didn't recognize. My hair was long and tangled, my clothes dirty and torn. I hadn't shaved and my eyes were wild and unfocused. I splashed water on my face and stared back at myself in disbelief. Who was this person? What had happened to me? I ran to her side and saw the same fear in her eyes that I'd seen in the doctor. I walked closer and knocked. "Hey, babe, you awake?" There was no response. I tried the door, but it was locked. Concerned, I started pounding on the door and yelling for my wife. "Hey, are you okay? Let me in." After a few moments, the door swung open. Sitting on the bed was my wife, or what appeared to be her. But it wasn't her. I could tell by the way her hair was covering her face and the fact that she was wearing clothes that weren't hers. I stood there stunned as she slowly lifted her head. What the hell? I screamed. The woman in my bed smiled at me, her eyes gleaming with excitement. "Surprise, I'm here," she said. I backed away, tripping over my own feet. "Who are you? Where's my wife?" "You don't recognize me anymore, sweetheart," she said, her voice dripping with mock hurt. "After everything I've done for you?" I shook my head, tears streaming down my face. "Get out of my house, you monster," I yelled, lunging for her. She shrieked and recoiled, scrambling back onto the bed. She scrambled to the far corner, curling into a ball. "Please, please don't hurt me," she cried. The nurse motioned for me to come out of the room again, this time with a gentle but firm touch. I knew something was seriously wrong. When the doctor spoke, his voice was grim. "You lost the baby." "I'm sorry," he said, reaching out to place a hand on my shoulder. Before I could ask any questions, the room spun and I collapsed onto the floor. I vaguely remember my wife being let out of the room crying and then nothing. Well, he thought she was dead. Hi, I'm your host. And today, I am going to tell you the story of the woman who didn't know she was dead. Our next Reddit post is from a user. "My wife died 1 week ago. We had our first anniversary 3 days before. We were both shocked when we found out we were pregnant because neither of us expected to get pregnant right away. We couldn't wait to start our little family. I put all my efforts into ensuring we could give our unborn child the best life possible. I worked extra shifts at my job, and we saved up enough money to move to a new home, which I did 2 weeks ago. The last few months were some of the happiest of my life. This brings me to the day my wife died. 2 days prior, she had felt some abdominal pain and cramping, so I took her to the hospital where the doctor determined it was likely the baby coming early. He said we'd do an ultrasound, and if everything was okay, we would let her rest until the baby was ready to come out. As I was leaving the room, the nurse told me to make sure I kept the door open in case she needed anything. When I returned, my wife was asleep. I stayed by her side, talking to her and rubbing her head until the doctor came in. He began performing an ultrasound, and I watched in fascination as the screen lit up with images of our baby. My wife and I looked at each other and smiled. It was at that moment that my world stopped. The smile faded from the doctor's face as he paused the ultrasound and turned to leave without saying a word. My wife and I were both confused. I went to follow him, but she stopped me. "Don't," she mouthed. I sat down next to her bed and asked what was wrong. She shook her head and tried to smile. I don't remember what we talked about after that, but I do remember falling asleep on the couch in the waiting room. I was woken by a woman standing over me. "Sir, you need to come see something." I woke up in our bed in our new house. I was disoriented. As I stumbled back to our bedroom, I noticed a small light coming from under the door. Now I was scared. Why was she in my house? Who was she? I ran to the door and flung it open. Here I am now, a week later, sitting in my bed in the same room where my wife died. Our next Reddit post is from another user. On the night in question, I was doing my nightly rounds of cans, bottles, and cardboard outside. Moments later, she emerged from the hallway and walked towards me. I panicked and called the police. When they arrived, they found her dead on the floor. Well, that was the story of the woman who didn't know she was dead. And now it's time to hear your story. Comment below.